Okay.
Hi, Mr. Speer. It's very nice to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here. Appreciate the time.
Um, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Curtis Speer. I'm the artist and owner of Cusp Gallery here in Newport. Um, been an artist my whole life, but worked in the corporate sector for a little while, which taught me the business side of how to be creative. And 9 years ago, I opened my own gallery. So,
Hmm. Where did you go to college?
Oklahoma University. I grew up in Oklahoma. I was part of a military family, so we lived all over the United States, but kept ending up back in the awful state of Oklahoma, which is not a hotbed of creativity, although it's a good place. Then I got a 4 year scholarship for drawing, which kept me in Oklahoma until I was a senior in college. Then I ended up in Dallas, Texas, and ended up working for Banana Republic, Neiman Marcus, Pottery Barn, Williams
Wow.
Sonoma, and that opened my whole world. So, yeah,
So, do you think that learning from your college influenced your creative path?
I think growing up in Oklahoma as a creative person kind of made me dig my heels into being more creative. Oklahoma, although a very simple and kind place full of really, really good people, it didn't necessarily foster like a really contemporary approach to the world. Nothing wrong with, again, nothing wrong with Oklahoma. I'm proud to be from there. Um, but I think as any creative person, whether you're a writer or a cinematographer or a visual artist, dancer, theater, you've got to step outside of your comfort zone,
Hmm.
regardless of where you grow up. So I think expanding my horizons, living in Texas and on the West Coast, working for Nike in Portland, Oregon, living in Laguna Beach, California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, ending up in New England, 9 years ago, has really kind of helped me see the world in as many different perspectives as I can foster right now at the age of what am I 51 years old. So my family always makes fun of me. They're like, you're the gypsy of the family, and I go, no, I don't, because I'm responsible. It's not like I'm living out of a car and panhandling my way through life. I'm hustling, but I also tell my family that if this is the last life I get to live or the only life I get to live, I want to experience as much of it as possible.
Yeah.
So being transient and growing up in a military family kind of took the fear out of starting over and over again, like making new friends in school. So as an adult, you got to get yourself out there, meet people, and running my own business helps because now I have my own creative space that people can come into. So yeah, it all played a very necessary role in my journey. So no regrets.
I can tell you're a very hardworking man because look at how successful you are.
Thank you. It hasn't gone without a hustle, that's for sure.
I want to, I want you to shed some light on your art pieces more. So I want to ask, what is the main focus of your artworks, and if there's any special themes or meanings or processes involved?
Okay, great question. Let's see. I went to school for drawing, and drawing is a very controlled. I mean, we all know how to sketch or
Yeah, I also
do
draw.
whatever. So yeah, so having a small instrument in your hand and really controlling that aspect, really, you kind of turn inward. It's not like this very gregarious process. Like you're not having conversations while you're drawing a still life, and I really excelled in that. And like I said, I got a 4 year scholarship for it. But in creating the still lifes in college, like my professor always, she incorporated like found objects and animal skulls and decaying aspects of nature, whether they're flowers or branches or bird nests or whatever. And then she'd incorporate something modern like a tennis shoe. And then have 3 weeks to draw the thing, or even a slinky, like an old metal slinky. She's like, okay, Curtis, I want you to make this slinky look like a black and white photograph. I'm like, okay, game on. And it took forever, but it turned out great. But when I got in the real world, drawing, everything was going computer generated. This was back way before you were probably born.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, I don't want to sit at a computer with a mouse all day being creative. So I got out in the real world and I started doing window design for retail stores. So I got on board with Banana Republic, and at the time, they had a home department. There was 11 home stores in the country, and I had free creative reign for that store in Dallas, Texas. And the adjacent stores were Neiman Marcus and Barney's, and those were both very creative, highly energized, colorful competitors of mine, just personally of mine, not necessarily Banana Republic. And then I got hired to do, somebody saw my store design stuff, and they asked me if I wanted to be a set stylist for Pottery Barn in Williams-Sonoma. So on set, of course, I'm going to say yes. And I didn't really know what I was doing, how I was going to do it, how I was going to fake it till I made it. But I could put things together because I was taught composition in school. But doing room sets was a little bit different. Jewelry sets were obviously a little more controlled, like drawing. But in that, I started to dabble with painting, and I completely floundered because it was a little too loose, right? You're like the distance of the paintbrush and then the canvas plus, your arm length. And it's just like this really loose, like haphazard. And what they're trying to teach you is how to unlearn all the fine tuning of drawing. But they didn't tell me that. They didn't say, we're going to untrain your brain, and then we're going to put you in a painting class, and then you're going to meld the two, and you'll probably excel. But I didn't get that far. I just dropped out. So I went back into drawing, and on set, I learned how to use cameras because I work with photographers from all over the world, from Europe, from New York, from the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, and like some top tier talent. And so in designing these spaces, I was like, so how are you photographing this? And they're like, well, think of the room or think of the set as a camera. So if you close one eye, it'll actually flatten the image. So I started playing around. One of the biggest lessons was Neiman Marcus, and we were doing a precious jewelry catalog. And it was all inspired by the Dutch masters from the 1600s, which is what really started to influence my personal work. So here we've got this beautiful set. We're putting like $1 million butterfly brooches and like $60,000 diamond rings and stuff. And we've got security everywhere, and I'm freaking out. I'm like floundering, like I'm nervous. But I was like, okay, when you get home tonight, Curtis, I want you to pick up your camera that you got from Target. I want you to start playing with still lifes. And so this was like my own little homework. Nobody was asking me to do it. And then I started putting stuff together that necessarily didn't go together. So I don't know if you're familiar with much of my work, but I always add elements that have this juxtaposition that don't make sense at all. Like one of my more recent pictures is a bird nest with a blue egg and a butterfly coming out, right? Butterflies aren't hatched. It's a whole chrysalis process. So what I found in my work is it gets people to stop a little bit longer and look at the work. So in dissecting my work, and I'm completely transparent about this, I was abused a lot as a little kid, not by my family, but babysitters, music teachers, stuff like that. And what happens when people get abused? There's trauma. So I started looking at my work, my still life work, and I started looking at there's this brooding, evocative, kind of somber aspect to most of my work, even if it's just a landscape image. Like a lot of my friends will say, you took the blue out of the sky. Why'd you do that? And I'm like, because the sky's not really that blue, or it doesn't feel that blue to me. So I only say this because I started looking at my life, and every aspect is connected to everything else. So you've got to have the light and the dark and the good and the bad and the yin and the yang and the black and the white. Otherwise, none of it makes sense. But what I found when people look at my work, they're like, this makes me feel something. It makes me feel too emotional, and I don't want to look at it anymore. So I started tapping into how my work triggers people, and not necessarily asking them on the spot, like, what did this just stir up in you? But noticing that it's triggering something that they don't want to heal from, or they're not ready to heal from. So in that, I found that my work started creating conversations for people to be as completely transparent in my gallery, and sometimes in tears. And just, girls would talk about being raped, and not that my work says rape, it just stirs something up. So I really started focusing more on that because I realized there was a lot of trauma I needed to heal from. So I know art is subjective, and my work doesn't necessarily resonate with everybody, but the people that it does resonate with, there's a healing process going on. So I'd say Dutch-inspired still life is most of my work. I can do some portraiture. I'm not the best at it. I do a series of self-portraits called The Light Keeper, also based on my childhood. I can shoot architecture, but I'm really drawn to abandoned architecture, like Route 66 over on the west side of the country is absolutely phenomenal. I photographed a couple concentration camps. But all these things tie into some aspect of my life. So it's not just taking a picture and hoping that it'll sell. It's taking a picture that kind of represents who I am on an inside. So very long answer to your question, but I think it's a well-rounded answer. So
It's very, very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of
You can, you
artists.
can edit as much of that out as possible.
No, it's very fruitful. I'm gonna keep
Oh, you're
going.
good.
So there's a lot of artists in this world who like shares the same mindset, like Francis Bacon or like Van Gogh or Picasso. They also like convey their feelings very strong, and I can see them in your works too. Like I can see the colors. They very contrast a lot, and Mr. Hans also mentioned it. Like the darkness and the vibrancy, the saturation of the colors really adds to emotions. So it's like one of my, because I haven't seen a lot of photography works before. It really astonishes me. Yeah. So my next question is, why did you choose to do the exhibition at St. George's? What makes this exhibition special?
Oh, good question. So Mike is a really good friend of mine, and when I met him, I think 2 years ago, we just hit it off. And you know, Mike, he's just super chill, laid back, super talented, really good with young people, really easy to be around. So he's like, hey, you know, I'm professor of sculpture at St. George's. We've got this gallery. Would you be interested in having a show? And I was like, oh, well, like I could, but I have my own gallery. So having a gallery or having a show in another gallery outside of my own gallery in the same town was a little. But I'm like, there's people that go to St. George's. There's a whole student body that's not necessarily walking in my door. So I was like, I'm not going to pass up this opportunity. He's like, yeah, but it's in January. Is that a problem? I said, the year-round population here, especially the students at St. George's. I mean, going to school every day. What do you guys, Monday through Saturday?
Yeah.
Do you go to school 6 days a week? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty. So I was telling Mike even on the opening night about a month ago, I said, you know, it's not about, I think somebody had asked me, do you plan on selling everything tonight or while the show is up? And I go, I never thought about selling it. I mean, although it was available for acquisition, I said, if I can inspire a young person to look at, especially my work, because it's photography on cotton. If I can inspire a young creative person to look at photography a little different than they're expecting it, then I've done my job. What they do with that outside of that, hopefully they're inspired by it or they take it to another level, a better level. Totally cool with it. And then I got your email about, hey, really like the show. Can I interview you?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So at least landed on one person in a good way. So yeah. So I thank you. You know, thanks, Mike, for giving me the opportunity to show at the Hunter Gallery. It was a great space.
It's definitely very influential. Like most of those people in the school have seen it.
Oh, good. Now, are you an artist as well? Before we like go further, are you an art student or?
Yes, I've been painting for more than 10 years, and I also do sculptures and drawings. So
okay, what's your favorite?
I'm interested.
Like,
I do paintings mostly.
Okay, all right. Okay, we'll talk later. We might have a side conversation in an email
after
this week.
this. Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a very deep question.
Yeah, okay.
So what do you think are the standards for a good piece of art?
What is that? Say that again.
Do you think there's a fixed standard for a good piece of art? And if there is, what do you think that would be?
Oh, God, that's a good question because I think most artists have an imposter syndrome thing, right? Like, am I really good at what I do? Am I doing anything that's different than anybody else? It's kind of that like American Idol thing. Like we've seen it a million times. We've heard it a million times. What's going to set you apart? What's going to set your work apart from Basquiat or Warhol or Vivian Maier? I mean, you could go through a million different artists. And so I thought, well, don't worry about maybe what the perceived standard is, because the art world is a very finicky, fickle. You could be hot one day and you could be poor the next day and nobody's calling you, nobody's looking at your work. And I've experienced this really crazy bell curve. I had a really great gallery in Provincetown, which is a true art colony. There are 50 art galleries on one street. People from all over the world go to Provincetown to buy art, to consider art, to collect art. And historically, it's known to, you know, Edward Hopper lived there. You know, some of the American greats. Like, holy crap! So I'm in a really deeply entrenched artistic space, and my sales were through the roof for about 4 years in a row. And I'm like, we made it. Like, I don't have to eat ramen noodles anymore, or whatever. Tuna sandwiches. And then post pandemic, like the pandemic was great for my business because everybody's stuck at home and they're looking at their backgrounds like I need to update my space, whether it's art or furniture or whatever. And then 2021 hit and my sales went completely into the ground. Nobody was emailing, nobody was coming in, nobody was texting, nobody was liking anything on Instagram. And I thought, was that just a sham? Was that just like a universal like joke? Like you're going to get a taste of it and then we're going to take it all away. So I started back to your question, the standard. In that time, I watched a documentary called The Price of Everything. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's about the art world and it's about the art brokering world, like the Christie's auctions, right? Like, the Banksy stuff. And it would follow these artists and these art buyers. So it's two different stories. It's a pretty disheartening, like when you look at it, you kind of just look at the whole art world and you're like, what a bunch of BS, right? Because you're only as good as the next article or the next interview or the next art sale. And that could all disappear tomorrow. So the cost of everything or the price of everything. So it follows these living artists that create these impeccable, phenomenal, powerful bodies of work. And they get bought by somebody who's just collecting art to resell it. And it happens all over the world, but it's following like a handful of these people. And it shows their art collections and they're like, yeah, there's a whole closet, there's a whole basement. We don't know who the artist is. We don't know what it means. We don't really care. We just know in 2 years it's going to be worth 3 times as much. And that's all we're waiting. And you kind of look at it and you're like, well, I guess you need those people. But at the same time, it showed this living artist, she's got a laptop in front of her, and her work is up for auction at one of the auction houses. She's a living, breathing, phenomenal, beautiful African-American woman. Watching her art get sold for 3 or 4 times as much as she sold it to the client. She didn't get a dime of that. And just the look on her face going, oh my God, these people just bought my work so they can make more money off it. They don't even care about me. They didn't care about my work. So when you ask like what the standard is, I don't know if there's a solid answer to that. I think it's subjective. I tell people that look at my work, if it resonates with you, then yes, I want you to have it. But if you don't get it, or if you're being a jerk to me, I don't necessarily want to sell it to you either. Because that's my energy, that's my power, that's coming from me. And I think a lot of artists think they just, if somebody's interested in the work, they should just sell it. And sometimes they mark it way down just to get it to move. And they think, all right, I sold a piece of art. But you kind of got to look at your work and go, okay, why am I creating what I'm creating? And why do I want this person to have it? I think that's a good question for a young person or a mid-career artist or somebody who's, 85 years old and they've been an amazing artist their whole life. So I don't know. You look at Vermeer's work. I think he died one of the poorest artists in the world. And nobody really valued his work. I mean, they knew at the time he was good, but he was just paying debts with his paintings.
Or Van Gogh.
Yeah, Vermeer. So the girl with the pearl earring.
Yeah. I'm saying or Van Gogh.
So I just saw his exhibition in Amsterdam. I think it was the largest collection of Vermeers in one place, and it was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And that's what I learned. One, almost every painting he did, there's pearls in every picture. Either the girl is wearing pearls or there's a pearl necklace on the table. There's a pearl reference in it. But for some reason, the girl with the pearl earring got the best publicity. And I'm not even saying it's the best or worst painting. It's just there's some really good painting. But he died a very poor man because he would use his paintings to pay debts so he could keep his family fed and keep the rent paid and all that. So I don't know. I think it's the standards. I think they vary year to year. I think they vary market to market. I don't think my work would do well in Florida. It definitely didn't do well in Laguna Beach, California, because it made people feel something they didn't want to feel. And I'm not discounting people in Laguna Beach or Orange County. It's just some people want rainbows and unicorns, and some people want some really messed up stuff. So I feel like New England's kind of where I belong. So
yeah, I feel like the modern art trend it's not very good because more and more artists are trying to be efficient, like what they call abstract art. They're just following path of those abstract artists like Pollock or Duchamp, and they're just creating works that they don't really attach to, but they try to make it sound deep and sell money. How do you view this trend?
Well, let's look at Instagram. Instagram it's a blessing and a curse. Sometimes I'm oversaturated with creativity. I'm like, well, I don't want to be creative because I saw 10 other people do it 10 times better than I ever could have. But then I start looking at these some of these accounts where they're pouring paint out of a bucket and the canvas is spinning or the paint cans are spinning and then they sign it and you're like, I mean, that's a technique, but I don't, is it coming from a
Pollock?
soulful, hopeful place? Like, what's the story behind that, right? And then what I always tell artists when I have shows for other artists, I said, don't worry about your artist statement. And they said, but don't we need it? And I said, if you were a writer, I would expect you to write an artist statement, but you are a visual artist, so don't worry about, because what I find is some artists get so verbose and they're like, well, the red color means this and the yellow means this and the broken glass symbolizes this. And you're just like, and I'm not saying every artist should just throw their artist statement out the window, because sometimes you need an artist statement to guide that viewer through the process. But you can read a BS artist statement in 2 seconds and call it out. And that's why I kind of shy away from, that's why I shy away from artists. I'd rather tell you about who I am, what my background is, and then like the show at St. George's, I put a written word with it. So life and color. So everything was still life. It was about juxtaposition, light and dark and bright and somber. And then there was this whole story about life and color, and the colors tying to every single emotion that humans experience, and gratitude, and even the dark days, right? I don't know if you had a chance to read it. I can send it to you in an email. But I'd rather artists put that kind of stuff with their work and guide the viewer or the collector through an emotional process and let that person interpret the work however they need to interpret. Because I can tell you, hey, I was abused, and that's what this means to me. And you can say, well, I was physically abused too, but this is what it means to me. This is how I interpret, right? So for me to put that on you, and I feel like it's a disservice to the stuff that you need to process in order to appreciate somebody's work. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
So I think art should come from a soulful place. I think it should be authentic, right? Like you hear a pop song every other day, right? And you're like, but it doesn't mean anything. Like it might be fun to dance to or bop your head or drive around to, but it doesn't penetrate, right? It's not stirring anything. It's not like giving you goosebumps or making you cry or making you just want to scream or whatever. It's just like background music. So I think visual artists have a responsibility to dig a little. Not always, but know the why behind what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just staying busy.
I feel like a good piece of art should be able to explain itself to the viewer without the viewer reading like what it is about. So that's why I think artists like Cy Twombly, Pollock, or even some of Basquiat is like it's very repetitive, and it's like some of their like famous works are obviously good, but the rest of them they just look very alike, and I just hate this.
Yeah, and I understand it, right? There's got to be a process. Like you look at Twombly's work, and I saw a gorgeous piece in Portland, Oregon. I mean, it was huge, and it was black writing on a white canvas, and it had so much tension and music. Like it was like when you looked at it, you could almost see music. It was beautiful, but it was also very like it was almost like frenetic jazz or classical that's just like, and you're sitting there and you're like, I'm feeling that my shoulders creeping up and I don't, I'm feeling a little anxious or whatever. But I remember standing in front of one of Cy Twombly's works and feeling that way. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, but it's doing something to me, which made me really appreciate it. I can't say that across, you look at Van Gogh's portfolio, right? And his first self-portraits were very realistic. But almost like looking in the mirror. And then, of course, you fast forward to Van Gogh's self-portraits, and they're a little bit jumbled, disfigured, surreal, right? Abstract. Even Salvador Dali's work, right? Like that's the kind of stuff you could dissect and be like, hey, why is the clock melting? And why is this skeleton in the tree and the whole bit? So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like Instagram has kind of ruined. I think it ruined the world. Because everything's so saturated now. I don't feel like there's original ideas anymore. And maybe that's why I've hesitated in creating new work for myself, because I'm like, that's been done. Or people's attention spans is like nothing now. So no matter how good your work is, people are just looking at it for a split second, and then they're moving. So I don't know how we get people to slow down a little bit and appreciate what we're putting out there. So
That's true.
yeah,
We are
yeah.
living
If
in
you
a fast
come
world.
up with an answer to that, Alex, let me know.
I've I've interviewed many artists and I haven't come with an answer to
Okay. Well, if you come across something, just feel free to let me know. So.
that. Definitely. Also, talking about the social media, there's also AIs nowadays. Like last year, I tried to do some paintings using the help of AI, so I can basically give AI a prompt and they can generate a photo or like a painting in my wanted style. So now I think more and more artists are using AI to be incorporated in their like creative process. What do you think about that? And do you think AI is gonna one day overtake us?
Well, I think human connection is going to create human connection. So I think AI is a useful tool. It's almost like what's the music auto tune with music, and you may not be able to sing, but there was this device called auto tuning
Hmm.
that could balance out your voice. And I think AI can do the same thing for artists. I think it's a good tool for inspiration, right? So you enter the prompt, you're like, you know, just going to make something up. A dilapidated house on a hill with a tree covered in ravens, right? And then it's going to create something that maybe you don't paint 100% the way it generated, but you're like, I never thought of looking at that tree that way, right? So I think it's our responsibility to use these tools responsibly and not let it do 100% of the work. But I also feel if you were to generate something in AI and then we'll say print it on a canvas and then add a few like realistic brush strokes and be like, yeah, that's my painting. Yeah, sure, it's 100% original, but it lacks the human connection, either through the brushstroke or through the way it produced the work. So it's gonna be around. I don't think there's any way around it. Same with ChatGPT. You've got to use it responsibly as a tool for inspiration, as a launching point. If you become 100% reliant on it, and some artists use auto tune for their entire album, you're like, it all sounds the same, and I'm probably not going to buy anything else from, right? Or I'm not interested in anything else they put out. But there's a time and a place to use these tools. So
Hmm.
I don't discount it. I've used AI for just some ideas like, this winter I've been kind of depressed and a little slow. So I'm like, so I still use it as a creative outlet as opposed to picking up my camera and setting up a still life. And I'll say, okay, well, let's just see what this could prompt because it might inspire me to go prop shopping or buy some other elements or find elements in the house that I can put in the next still life. But I don't put out AI generated stuff on Instagram like this is mine.
Yeah.
So I think some people do that, but it's just not the world I want to live in. So no harm, no foul. If somebody can make a killing doing it, or launch that next big corporate gig, or be a world renowned something, go for it. Yeah,
My art teacher always tells me that even though AI can mimic something, they can only mimic. So like the soul is always coming from the artist. If you don't have the ideas, like however good they are, they can't create something for you.
true,
Yeah.
true. Well, an AI like Chat GPT, it's only creating what people have put into it. Does that make sense? So it
Yeah.
can only go so far. But our imaginations are endless, right? Like infinite possibility. Like growing up in Oklahoma, we didn't have cell phones and computers. We were not locked out of the house all day, but our parents were like, until it's dinner time, you're not coming home. So go ride your bike and play with
Yeah.
friends and use imagination and build forts and whatever. And it's a really healthy way to engage the brain and then, just think big and pipe dreams. So I hope people don't get too complacent with their devices. And I think, smartphones, regardless of what you have, they can be pretty detrimental. I mean, they call it doom scrolling for a reason. So
Mm,
yeah, I think that alone is sucking the life out of most people. So
definitely.
yeah, yeah.
And that was my last question. Thank you, Mr. Spear.
That was it. All right, that was easy.